1889 to 91, there was another major famine. In 1896 to 1899, there was another major famine. So you can see that right through Vivekananda's working life, he had to confront the reality of famine. I will read you a little bit from some books I have brought with me about the situation of famine at that time. And I will draw parallels from that situation to the situation that we have among us today. Before that, I will like to tell you, after this confronting these misfortunes of the people of India, after confronting this series of famines, what advice did Vivekananda leave for us at that time? The advice that he gave reaches out across the centuries and tells us how we can conduct ourselves today. I'll just read you a little bit from Vivekananda's writings about what his social analysis was of the situation. That is why Vivekananda's new India will not emerge from the insensate high-born classes, but from the lowly and depressed. We hear him making his great pronouncement. This is Vivekananda I am quoting. Let new India arise out of the peasants' cottages. He does not talk of the mahals of the rich and famous. He does not talk about the Ambani's 40-story mansion in Bombay with a helipad from which Mr. Ambani can get off and enter his home. He talks about new India arise out of the peasant's cottage, grasping the plough out of the huts of the fisherman, the cobbler, and the sweeper. Let her spring from the grocer's shop, from beside the oven of the fritter seller. Let her emanate from the factory, from marts and the markets. I was so glad when I was waiting to come into this hall. I was speaking to Swami Anuragananda, and he was telling me about the program of disability management in the Faculty of Disability Management. It is truly an inspiring example of what Vivekananda has said, that they have let her emanate from the factory, from the marts and the markets. They have suffered eternal misery, which has given them unflinching vitality. Living on a handful of grain, they can convulse the world. Give them only half a piece of bread, and the whole world will not be big enough to contain their energy. Skeletons of the past there before you are your successors, the India that is to be. No sooner will you disappear, you will hear the inaugural shout of Renaissance India, ringing with the voice of a million thunders and reverberating throughout the universe. Yet a time will come when there will be the rising of the Shudra class with their Shudrahood. That is to say, not like that as at present, when the Shudras are becoming great by acquiring the characteristic qualities of the Vaishyas or the Kshatriyas. Time will come when the Shudras of every country, with their inborn Shudra nature and habits, will gain absolute supremacy in every society. This is the same as what Karl Marx has said in the Communist Manifesto. Workers of all countries unite you have nothing to lose but your chains. Vivekananda is saying the same thing in this passage. Time will come when the Shudras of every country, with their inborn Shudra nature and habits, will gain absolute supremacy in every society. The first glow of the dawn of this new power have already begun to break away slowly upon the Western world. Socialism and other like sects are the vanguard of this social revolution. The peasant, the shoemaker, the sweeper, and such other lower classes of India have much greater quality for work and self-reliance than you. They have been silent. This he is saying, this is not you. When he says you, he is not addressing himself to you. He is saying, he is talking to his interlocutor, the person he was writing a letter to. He says, the peasant, the shoemaker, the sweeper, and other such lower classes of India have much greater quality for work and self-reliance than you. They have been silently working through long ages and produced the entire wealth of the land without a word of complaint. Gradually, capital is drifting into their hands. You have so long oppressed these forbearing masses, and now is the time for their retribution. They are the backbone of the nation in all countries. Now, I would like to just tell you a little bit about these famines that took place all over India at the time when Vivekananda was working in this country. The rise of prices was so extraordinary. He's talking about food prices here. The food prices rose so high at particular times that the people were simply unable to buy the food. The rise of prices was so extraordinary, and the available supply, as compared with the well-known requirements, so scanty that merchants and dealers, hopeful of enormous future gains. You see, just at that time, the railways had been constructed all over India. So, if a shortage of food occurred at one place, the stores in that place were not, could not be used for relieving the famine in that place. What was happening is that telegraph was also developed at that particular time. So, because of the telegraph, the traders could get the knowledge of the food prices all over the country, and they could move the food because of the railways. They could move the food from areas where the food price was low to areas where the food price was high. So as a result of this telegraph and the railway, what happened was that traders, instead of using the food, selling the food at the prices that were available in the local market, they started profiteering and selling the food in other places where the prices were higher, so that the food at the local level was no longer available. The rise of prices was so extraordinary, and the available supply as compared with the well-known requirements so scanty, that merchants and dealers, hopeful of enormous future gains, appeared determined to hold their stocks for some indefinite time and not to part with the article which was becoming of such value. This is food. It was apparent that to the government that facilities for moving grain by rail were rapidly raising prices everywhere, and the activity of apparent importation and railway transit did not indicate any addition to the food stocks of the presidency. Retail trade up country was almost at a standstill. Nobody was selling grain. They were storing the grain. They were getting the news from the telegraph of where the grain prices are highest, and they were using the railways to move the grain to that area.